I think it's pretty understandable that the San Francisco 49ers have had easily the most frustrating year they've had in a long time, and probably the most frustrating year they've had since Kyle Shanahan took over as head coach of the team. They had Brock Purdy, who, even though he played most of the games, it never really seemed like he was at the top of his capabilities last year. Christian McCaffrey obviously had his injuries throughout the season. Deebo Samuel wasn't his usual self. George Kittle had easily his best year since 2018 or 2019, depending on how you look at his stats. But as a whole, the San Francisco 49ers never really got out of the gates very well. And even though they had a chance, they were sitting at 5-4 after their 9th game of the year. They end up losing 7 of their next 8 games and finish 6-11 on the season as a whole. So, like I said, easily the most frustrating year they've had in a while. And I think some of the frustration continues into free agency this year, as we saw a lot of their players move on to new teams this year. And a lot of players that have been, came up as San Francisco 49ers and have grown into very good players for this team. Namely, Aaron Banks. Namely, Jalen Moore, Talanoa Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw. Guys who have been not only parts of winning teams, but parts of teams that went to the Super Bowl multiple times. And it's not just the free agents that left. It's the trading of Deebo Samuel, and it's trading Jordan Mason to the Minnesota Vikings. Even though originally he was just going to be a free agent signing for Minnesota, they end up getting a trade done and getting some sort of asset out of Jordan Mason. But this was a pretty tough year to see everybody that San Francisco lost. I do put a little bit of stock in the fact that this is a year to kind of not go overboard on the players that we're losing. I do think it sucks. You're losing a guy in Jalen Moore and a guy in Aaron Banks, who you were hoping to be, offensive line pieces for your team for multiple years. And they end up going to different teams. Jalen Moore moving on to be the left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, and Aaron Banks moving on to be a guard for the Green Bay Packers. But between those two, $107 million for those two players. I think it's okay to lose those two guys if that's how much money they were garnering. Especially with the other guys that they lost. Charvarius Ward, $54 million. Leonard Floyd, $10 million. Malik Collins, $20 million. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of guys and talent that they lost. It's also a lot of money that they didn't have to pay, which I do somewhat give them some credit for just kind of not folding in their hand, but just understanding that the value isn't there to keep this team around that same way, especially when they're going to need to give Brock Purdy a contract extension soon. And I think that mindset seeped into the players that they signed as well as re-signed as well. There's not a single guy that they signed this year that they're giving more than $5 million a year to, except for Luke Farrell. But, there's a potential out there with Farrell after a year if they don't feel like paying him those last 2 seasons. But everybody that they signed, Demarcus Robinson is a good signing for $4 million a year. Jason Pinnock is an incredible signing for $2 million a year. Even down to guys like Trey Brown, who they bring in from the Seahawks for a little under $2 million, Luke Gifford for a little under $2 million. It's not a terrible look when you take everything into account that I already said about the guys that they lost. They're not trying to go overboard on their books this year, next year, and further on after that. Because, like I said, they have a Brock Purdy extension staring them dead in the face that they have to make a decision on either this year or next year. And so with this mindset going into the draft this year, I think there's a lot of things at stake for San Francisco. The first thing is, in 2026, there's going to be a lot of money available for the San Francisco 49ers. And it could be even more if guys like Trent Williams, who is going to count against the cap almost $40 million next year. but he's also going to be 38 or 39 years old. So I see possibly him retiring next year. And that's a lot of money that could come off of your books if you do it the right way. The only really guy that you're looking at and saying maybe we don't want to pay him so much money is Nick Bosa. But again, that's something, if you handle it the right way, you could get out of that contract. But the thing is, when you look at 2025 and 2026 and beyond, I don't think the offensive line for San Francisco is really primed to have a lot of success. I already mentioned Trent Williams possibly retiring after next year. And beyond Trent Williams, it's going to be Colton McKivitz, Spencer Burford, Dominic Puny, Ben Barch, and not a lot other than that. So, honestly, in my opinion, I would build up this offensive line. Even if it's a guy that's going to sit for half or the full season, that's fine. That's fine. Because you want to build up an offensive line that can make Brock Purdy's life as a San Francisco 49er very, very smooth. And it's going to make John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and the rest of the top front office brass for the San Francisco 49ers look really smart for A, taking an offensive lineman this year, B, giving Brock Purdy that contract extension, and C, keeping them in the positions that they're at. Outside of building up the future of the offensive line in this year's draft, I think San Francisco needs to invest heavily in younger, fresher guys at the running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. Now, the running back position, it's a little bit harder to do something like that, right? Because in 2027, even though that's 3 years out from now, and we don't really want to hear about 2027, you're going to be paying Christian McCaffrey $25 million, and he's going to be 31, 32 years old. And we have no idea how his injury history is going to change between now and then. And his injury history now is already pretty murky with the injuries he went through this year, at the beginning of the year with the Achilles, and at the end of the year with seemingly an aggravation of that Achilles injury. And same thing with the wide receiver position. You're going to be paying a guy in Brandon Ayuk in 2027 and 2028 $40+ million. And I don't really see that that's going to be the best look for this team. Unless they have Ricky Pearsall develop into an incredible number 2 and possibly even supplant Brandon Ayuk as the number 1 receiver by 2027, and you're only going to pay him $3 million. But looking then, you don't have Jawan Jennings. You possibly don't have Demarcus Robinson. The only other guy for sure that you know is going to be on your roster after 2026, which is next year, is Jacob Cowing. And I don't really know if you rely on him as a number 3 or number 4 receiver in a top-tier offense. Overall, for the San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to give this free agency period a C+. And that might sound weird given how glowingly I talked about the guys that they let go and the guys they brought in terms of the amount of money that they saved and gave out. I still don't think they put together a very good roster. But maybe that's their plan. And, San Francisco, say what you want about Kyle Shanahan, say what you want about John Lynch, say what you want about their team in general. They have not really gone through a full-on rebuild since Kyle Shanahan got there. Not in the way that they actually want to do it. When Kyle Shanahan got there, they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, and in the same exact season that they traded for him, he got injured, tore his ACL, out the entire rest of 2017, out the entire 2018. And so I really see that this is their chance to actually reset and rebuild a team exactly the way they want to. And I think they should be warranted that opportunity. In 5 seasons, this team made 4 conference championship games, made 2 Super Bowls. No, they didn't win a Super Bowl, but they were one of the top 4 teams 4 out of 5 times. And it could have been 5 out of 5 times if Jimmy Garoppolo didn't get injured in 2020 as well. And so I think, like I said, I think they're warranted the opportunity to actually reset the deck. not saying that what they have now is bad. It's not bad to have George Kittle. It wasn't bad to have Deebo Samuel. It's not bad to have Christian McCaffrey. But we're kind of at the end of the line with this team. And it's looking like it's time to kind of reset everything and put together the team that you know is in lockstep with their coach, in lockstep with their general manager, and in lockstep with the entire front office and ownership group. Because that's the only way that they're going to get back to the Super Bowl, is if they're on the same page with everybody.